Hello and welcome. I'm Jeannie Long, Executive Director, Chicago Collections Consortium, and thank you for joining us today for our discussion, The Impact and Importance of Chicago Art Fairs and Festivals, a discussion with Chicago artists. I'm excited to be speaking with Chicago artists Cranston Knight, Carmen Perez Stopper, and Ken Reeve, and learn more about the impact of Chicago art fairs on their career. Please note that today's discussion will be recorded and available for viewing again on Chicago Collections website as well as our YouTube channel. We like to begin our program with Chicago Collections Land Acknowledgement Statement, which reads, Chicago Collections Consortium acknowledges and is grateful for the Native people who laid the foundation for the city of Chicago and for the diverse Indigenous nations that reside in Chicago today. When you visit our member organizations and when you experience Chicago outdoor spaces, we invite you to join in offering respect and gratitude to the many Indigenous peoples that reside in the Chicagoland region, as well as their ancestors. Chicago Collections, if many of you listening today may not be familiar with us, but for those who aren't, thank you for joining us. And to learn about Chicago Collections, we are organization comprised of over 60 museums, libraries, and cultural organizations, all working together for the preservation and promotion of Chicago history and culture. We do that through the sharing of our member archival collections on the Explore portal. Please check out the Explore portal shown here to check out all the offerings that our member archival collections have to offer. We also encourage you to take time to visit CCC's website for a complete listing of upcoming events and programs. CCC would like to acknowledge the donors shown here, whose generous funding allows us to offer amazing free programming events like the one being offered today, as well as supporting our efforts with the Explore Chicago Collections portal. Today's discussion is being offered as a complement to CCC's digital exhibit, A Snapshot of Chicago Art Fairs 1948 to 2004. Both programs are being funded by the Terra Foundation for American Art. CCC remains extremely grateful for the support of the Terra Foundation. Chicago Collections is proud to be part of Art Design Chicago, a citywide collaboration initiated by the Terra Foundation for American art that highlights the city's artistic heritage and creative communities. It's been an honor for CCC to partner with other organizations on this initiative, and many thanks to the Terra Foundation for facilitating these opportunities. And again, we encourage you to check out CCC's digital exhibit shown here, and also showing a listing of the CCC member organizations who contributed to the digital exhibit. I'm very excited, as mentioned, to be speaking with Cranston, Carmen, and Ken. A listing shown here of their websites. Please check them out. But today's discussion will dive in on the impact of Chicago art fairs and festivals have had on their career. All three of our artists, all working in different mediums, have a long and extensive career working in and exhibiting with Chicago art fairs. So let's begin our discussion. Tell us how your participation in Chicago art fairs have impacted your career.
I've got to say that being in an art fair allows me to have interchange with other artists. As much as I enjoy displaying my work, I enjoy the conversations with all the artists who are there. There's all types of mediums or other types of photographers. Um, Everyone's coming from a very different perspective, and I really enjoy speaking with them because from those individuals, I'm able to learn about other types of fairs, other types of venues that they've gone to, and also learn not only the politics, but also um, the types of things that they've had to go through in order to find the various fairs. So that interchange in terms of why do you create what you do, how do you do what you do, and the mediums.
And
So
really,
that's given me a lot of thoughts.
kind of a relaxed, collective feeling that way. Let me put you on the spot and ask you, do you remember what was your first art fair that you participated in?
It was a pop-up. Actually was a pop-up. I have to be very honest with you. It was a pop-up. I was driving down the street.
Ooh, Cranston. He'll come back to us in a minute. Carmen, um, we'll throw that question back to you. Tell us a little bit about the impact of Chicago art fairs on your career as an artist.
Hi.
Uh,
Oh, Cranston's back.
no, no, no. I'm
Maybe.
sorry.
Oh, Carmen, we'll go back to Cranston if he's indeed back.
I'm back. I'm here. Okay, I hope you can see me.
We can hear you. We can't see you, but
Okay, good. You
we'd
can
love
you
to
can
hear
see me.
the
Okay.
show. But tell us,
Okay.
so yours was a pop-up. What year would you say that was?
Um, just before COVID.
Oh, well, let's take it over to Carmen.
And
Tell us, Carmen.
and
Well, for me, participating in the art fairs has been wonderful in the sense that I've had the pleasure of meeting many wonderful artists, fair directors, and supporting individuals who have purchased my work. These events have allowed me to make valuable connections and follow up with potential clients. As well as it's important that I having my own studio has been a great advantage as it enables me to collaborate with people looking for custom designs. And I would not have had that opportunity unless I was out there in a show meeting people who supported me and didn't consider doing custom work or one of a kind pieces, which is what I specialize in.
And Carmen, when did you first participate in an art fair,
Oh gosh.
if you had to say?
Oh, back in maybe 2006 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I started with a little table, no tent, and beaded jewelry. I went vintage shopping for beads. I love recycling. I've always recycled, and I didn't have the money at the time. So that's how I started. Because when I got my degree from Northeastern Illinois University, I was just lost. Like, what do I do now? And so I created my studio at home and went vintage shopping and did started that way with a table by myself at a show. I believe it was Old Town at the time that I started doing presenting my work.
That's awesome. Ken, what can you share?
Oh, well, like what Cranston was saying, talking to the other artists is so great. You learn so much. But your art fair booth is your personal gallery. It's your portable gallery. You get to present all your work and get great feedback from everybody. And I love talking to other artists who maybe are just putting their toe into the water of getting into the art world and talking to them and inspiring them to move further with their work. And just talking to the people is so great. A lot of times, you'll have families come by and, most of the kids are like, what am I doing here? I want to be at home playing video games or something like that. But if you can get them inspired and, talk to them, I tell them that my job is coloring. I get to color all day, so I love getting them involved. And it brings me so much work through the year too, commission work and things like that, other opportunities. So yeah.
Well, I do think, the art fairs do break down that barrier of, what you find when you walk into a gallery space and
Yeah.
it it's a little more stifled, so to speak, or people don't feel as comfortable, or even walking through a gallery door. It's back to that community event of that gathering and having that openness, that one-on-one with an artist. And you're so right. I mean, as an artist, it is your own curated little gallery space, but there's no denying the amount of work that goes in terms of making that happen. We were discussing earlier, not only the setup, the associated costs, the lugging, that throw in a little bit of, bad Chicago weather.
And it starts days before, just getting all this together, making sure your work is just right. And it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding too.
And what, if these festivals, if these fairs, were no longer in operation, I mean, some of ones that have closed, what do you think had led to their closure?
Probably poor management, but it is so much work for a promoter. I know that. And it's a very thankless job. And they get to hear all the criticism and stuff like that. And I know that's a lot of work, but some do it really well. Some do it well, but I would think it's mostly poor management.
Have Cranston and Carmen, have you been involved in shows that have since closed and you're like, dang, why wish that never closed? And
Yes, I have.
Yes,
A lot of times it's it could be, first of all, it could be the first show to begin with, and it just didn't work out because of very low attendance. Or sometimes the producer of the event may even sell the event and another producer takes over, and it's just not the same. Another thing that's also really difficult for artists to decide is the oversaturation of shows on the same weekend. The high cost of management and the decline in community volunteers that are required to organize the show. It's a whole event, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the artists to participate, as well as for the show to go on.
Cranston, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree with Carmen. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of advertising. It's a lot of community volunteers. If you don't get enough volunteers, if you don't get enough artists, um, all those things. I mean, there's so many moving parts that if anyone breaks down, the show just does not function. And if it doesn't do it and if that happens enough time, then people don't want to invest. And once they start to divest, then that show is not going to be coming back the following year. Um, and people forget just how much it costs. It really costs quite a bit to get those programs up and running. So you're going to do a weekend show. It's a lot of work throughout the whole year trying to pull that together. And if any one of those parts fall, then the art show just won't come off the way that they wanted it to. And it's a loss in terms of capital. And once you get that, the following year, people don't want to reinvest because they don't want to lose the amount of money that they've already put in, which they lost the following year.
Yeah, it really is, a financial investment for those that are putting it on. But again, all those other costs associated, as well as, the tremendous amount, as Carmen said, from volunteers or just the staffing. It's not just good weather that's needed as well to launch these. But I think there's no denying the impact on the communities, and you've all touched upon this, the exchange of having that open exchange of the people coming through, and looking at your work and talking about your work. What are some of the areas of that that could be perhaps improved upon, or what have you, some of you have touched upon how, the marketing has fostered your own careers. But earlier, before we started, Cranston, you were sharing, there's great things happening, but people don't even know about it, how to get the word out, how to promote things, what could be done, to even further the efforts of a launch of an art fair that way.
I think it's community involvement. I think once you involve the community, you have a greater access not only to artists, but to individuals who want to become involved. And that's making them part of the whole exhibit. Um, as I was speaking when we spoke earlier, uh, in Douglas Park, you have a fantastic art fair. And so you have mom and pa, you need water. You go to mom and pa and say, hey, we need X, Y, and Z. And they'll say, fine, would you simply put my name on the brochure stating that we've gave you I don't know, three things of water, 3 cases of water. Fine. And then you go to another small store. That's you're bringing the whole community in. Someone wants to give food. Someone wants to be there. Um, and so once you bring the community in, that sustains the whole art fair. Not only do you have participants, but you have the involvement of the community. And so your fair is much more successful. The cost is much less because people are giving not only the time, but they're also giving the things which will sustain the fair through the number of days that the fair is going to continue.
Yeah, that vested interest.
It lowers the cost. It lowers the cost, and it gets everybody involved.
One of the
Yes.
things we
There's so
talked
many
about in the
things.
digital exhibit on Chicago art fairs, is the idea of even people being able to start their own collections, with Margaret Burroughs, the idea of promoting artwork, African American, artwork, Black artists, to be able to share their, just, to learn about it and start a collection that way. It's really an opportunity for young collectors, who have limited funds but want to start something too. But that having that vested interest and buy-in from a community to, you know, again, to help educate on art. It's not scary. It's approachable. Artists like to talk about their work, and having that exchange too.
Yes. There's so many things that could be done to improve. I mean, I
One
can
of-
think of several other things. For instance, to enhance an artist's experience can be, first of all, reducing booth costs and application fees. They're enormous. Eliminating the need to reapply every year. I mean, you still have to pay to apply to shows. Addressing parking issues and permits. As an artist, these are all the things that popped in my mind.
And just to,
Providing shelter,
but Carmen,
for
just to give
rainy.
people an idea, like what are the costs? Like what's the lowest each of you have paid to participate? What's, as Cranston said, so some are, one free, but two,
I mean, it depends on the show. I mean, you have art festivals, you have art shows, and then you have indoors and outdoor shows. So they're all different costs. But like right now, to do the other art fair can be $2,800. To do like Lakeview can be $400, which is an art outdoor show. But it it isn't any lower than my experience than really $400 on up.
mhm.
And depending on the show, like One of a Kind is up there as well. And
Yeah.
so the cost is just like, and they're all due at the same time, like in January,
Right.
you know.
It's a really good point. The logistics of it all, that, who can pay all that at once, at the same time.
Yeah, you're doing your taxes, you're trying to catch up, and And then all of a sudden you have all this, work you have to do, applications and photos and um getting you wear many hats, or you have to pay for it to be done, like someone photographing your works, and then you're on top of it, you're producing your work. On top of it, you're buying your materials, you're trying to get a new line production or whatever. I mean, whether for me it's, line of jewelry or line of my sculptures. And on top of that, I have to apply, I have to put the money aside for shows. And then when you're doing the shows, then it's a whole nother situation where you're paying someone to help you. I have my community, my friends, my people who are there to support me, but then you may have a rained out day where you don't get I mean, last year I almost fainted because it was so hot.
Mhm.
And then the other show before that, a lot of artists lost their their tents, collapsed from the rain, and they were flooded. And we don't make that money back. We don't get our booth money back. So it's a risk you have to take. So
It's,
the
yeah.
experience is this, it's just an overall experience. You have those wonderful great days where people really support you and buy your art and follow up and find you, and you meet new customers, and it's wonderful. But then, you have those days that it all depends. We're living in the Windy City, like they say, Chicago.
You have to tell yourself that it's a marathon and not a sprint, and because when I first started, there'd be a show here and there where I wouldn't make anything, and I would just be freaking out. I'd be like, what am I doing wrong? My work is no good. Why am I doing this? And luckily, my wife is smart enough to talk me down off the ledge and say, no, it's going to be okay. It was just a bad day. But those things happen. But it really is a whole year. You got to look at the whole year, you know. But like Carmen says, these things are, is subject to weather. You could have a whole weekend of a rain out and it just be terrible. But
Yeah.
you know,
What I do is I start to save money from one year to the next year. So for next year, I've already started saving money so that I can have enough. So by the time applications are due, or if I
mm,
need a new tent, which is already falling apart, and I've got to go to an Army surplus store to try to find something that's comparable, I've already saved up the money such that it doesn't break me. A bad weekend, I've lost I've lost what I thought was really good work. Um, Once rain hits and the tent goes in and it floods your booth, that that's pretty much it. I pack up and I go home because it's gone. So
mm,
being resilient, um, understanding that there will be a rainy day, it's going to be a hot day,
mm,
trying to provide for myself enough water, the substance that I need. It's a full year of me preparing for the following year.
Yes.
So I sort of put things in from year to year to year to make sure that I'm available and ready to go as much as possible. Let's put it as much as possible, bearing anything like an excess of taxes that showed up that I didn't realize. Well, oh, you need to pay. But other than that, I try to save from year to year.
And how is that marketing of your, when I say marketing, or the display rather, the selection of work that you'll be showing? Is it, geared on, uh, obviously size and, um, oh, I have found that this size, sells more, it's, where's that exchange as an artist and a marketable, piece of artwork? How do you just, how much space you have to put in, and then refill as necessary, or based on last year, these moved quickly, those types of consideration all part of your planning?
For me, I I am a little OCD. So I set up everything at home in my studio, my tables, everything is set up so that I can visualize. I like to be prepared and visualize. But I know that not everyone can afford a $300 piece or $400 piece or, depending. So it depends on the show because you have shows that are fine art shows, you have street festivals, and then you have art fairs. So each show, for the most part, you have an idea of what you think, but it's not necessarily the case because I like to show a variety of things that and make it affordable. I mean, I may have a pair of earrings for $25. And I mean, last year there was this cute little girl who bought a pair of earrings from me for her grandma, and she was so excited. So for me, I don't think of it in terms of like, oh, I have to stay within a certain price range. No, I make things different levels of prices and depending on the materials that I'm using. Of course, if I have a solid sterling silver sculpture, it's not going to be $25. So, I make it so that I have personally for me a variety of prices. And like I said, I set it up so that before I go there, I have an idea of how my booth is going to look. And I usually take photos of my booth setup. So I have an idea of what I did show the year beforehand and what's sold. And it all depends. It all depends on the person coming into your booth. People just walk by, don't even come in, and people do. So it depends on, the show itself and who has come to the show and if whether or not they like your work or not, which is fine. You'll find those customers who do and appreciate your work.
No, you raise a good point about knowing your audience and the difference between fairs and festivals and, what you're getting into and that advanced planning as well too. So, not sacrificing, you're not creating art just for the end game of some, it's keeping with your own artistic endeavor too and being able to share that.
Yeah, I make
Yes.
sure I have a wide array of price points and also sizes of my work. I've got some very, 8x8 drawings, and I also have reproductions of my work. Some of these shows won't allow you to have reproductions, but the ones that do, sometimes those reproductions that I sell between $20 and $40, sometimes those sales will pay for the booth,
Yes.
which is really great. But I make sure I have a wide array of sizes of work and prices. And even sometimes you can give a small piece to somebody who's really interested in your work, and they're thrilled, and it makes me happy too to give it to them, especially like young folks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do the same in terms of pricing. Everyone, as Carmen said, can't afford the when I talk about pricing, I'm primarily a landscape photographer, so I'm up early in the morning. It's like 10 degrees above zero, and I'm out on the lake taking a photo. So all of that, besides near freezing to death. Um, so I take all that in terms of of my pricing, but even then, I try to make it affordable as much as possible. And the other thing that I do a lot when I have a show is I want people to come to see my work. So as I agree with Carmen and I agree with Ken, people can just walk past. I mean, you've got lots of artists all over the place, and their work is good, perhaps better. But I want you in my booth. So I will step outside. Some people sit in. When I'm tired, of course, I do sit in my booth. But then I'll come out and I'll see people coming by, and I'll say, "Hey, how's your day?" And they'll say, "Oh, no, no, it's okay. What do you think about the fair?" And they'll say, "Oh, it's pretty good." I say, but I've got something you haven't seen yet, and just give me a minute. That's all I'm asking for, a minute of your time. And they'll say, "What?" a minute of your time. I'm not asking for anything else. Come on into my emporium. Let me show you what you have not seen yet. Of course, I've seen thousands of what I've got to see, perhaps, but I try to make it user friendly or friendly. My Sultan tent, you know, and come on in. I want to invite you in. Take a look, see if you like something. Let's talk about it. And what I try to do also is give them a history. You see that sunrise? Well, that sunrise was taken at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was a cold December. It's -5 degrees below zero. I've got on all my gear, and I'm waiting for the sun to come up, and I'm waiting for that one moment with a understanding that I only got a few seconds before the sunrise. So I got to know exactly when to depress the shutter to get that particular shot. And in some cases, I may have only a few seconds. And so I try to give them a history of each of the photos as much as possible, as quickly as possible, understanding that I don't have a lot of time. And a lot of them are quite amazing. They want to hear the backstory. They see the art in many tints, but they don't know the backstory of what all the things that an artist has gone through in order to get, for me in my case, to have taken that photo. And many of them really appreciate, even if they don't buy a piece, they really do enjoy having heard my story of all the things that I went through to achieve that particular photo.
Yes,
And
that's
you,
wonderful.
I mean, it speaks to all of you coming through. I mean, that approachable and very kind rapport that I'm sure you give to all those that would be attending, and that openness that you can find. And I'll be the first to say I'm Chicago centric and think we have a fabulous city because, you know, art fairs exist all over the world, all over the US. But in your opinion, what is so special about, you know, artist community in Chicago as related to art fairs working together? But is there a Chicago uniqueness that you've experienced or have witnessed?
I would say that there is from community to from community to community. You find different artists. Andersonville has a certain clientele. There's a certain group of people that's there. If I go to the Wilson Avenue Art Fair, there's another group of individuals, another different group of individuals who are coming there to buy. And so, traveling around to the various fairs that I have in Chicago, you've got individuals from all walks of life, but they're very unique to those particular communities. For me, that's great because I get to know, they are not only the artists, but I get to know and meet other individuals who I would not have met on Wilson Avenue, but they're in Andersonville, and they go to Andersonville, but they've not been to Wilson. I say, hey, have you ever tried to Wilson Avenue? And they go, I didn't even know it existed. That's fine. And so I get to meet them. They tell me about the art fairs that they've been to, the others that exist. And so it's that conversation that I like that really helps me grow, and that uniqueness in terms of I can't even call this region. It's from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood. Um, is I think what makes Chicago art fairs so unique and fascinating.
Yeah, that's true. That 57th Street is one of my favorite fairs, just because the diversity of the people that go to that fair. It's really great. It's so much different than something like Gold Coast or Port Clinton or something like that. They all have their unique group of people that are the customer base. It's also there's also like a different vibe. I do art fairs also in Arizona, and that's a whole different scene too. So yeah, it's different everywhere.
Mhm.
I do think, as I said, that um, as you both touched upon, you know, celebrating the Chicago communities, as well as that openness that all of you are displaying today, but displayed in the fairs as well to those visiting. I mean, that's something very Midwestern, but I'll be so bold to say Chicago-esque too, that you know, we're friendly, and we'd like to share information that way too. Let's dive in a little bit about all of you specifically, and you know, having these conversations, and you know, talking about digital archives as seen in our digital exhibit on the art fair. What processes have you started, or have you for that matter, on archiving your own work for future generations to be able to share, and your participation at different art fairs too, in that moment of history and what they represent?
Well,
For me, I'm sorry,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I just started recently, just because of this webinar, bringing up archiving the work, because I never really thought that much about it. My archiving only went as far as what I put up on Facebook, social media, and into my iPhoto collection. So that was really my only archive. But now, because of this webinar, I thought, well, you know, that's a pretty good idea. Maybe I should get into that. So I've started with my inventory number, my title, date of creation, medium, dimensions, the price, the image and the description, and also the origin of the image, which is, you know, something that Cranston was talking about. I work from my own photos, so all my paintings do have a backstory, and they do come from, you know, somewhere else, like the lakefront or the Porcupine Mountains in Michigan, or something like that. So and when I put in my first entry, it just felt good. It felt good. So yeah, that's what I do.
I'm glad we were able to be a part of that.
That's cool.
For me, I hadn't thought about it other than when you asked the question, because it takes a lot of time and energy just to keep up with. I have 3 different websites, and you know, Facebook and Instagram and Zap application, all of that. But I didn't really think about it until you mentioned it. So I'm gonna pursue it, but I didn't really know where to go, because I know they have art archives, but in terms of how to even begin, because I know at one point the Artists Coalition used to have, I mean, that was slides back then. Um, but I mean, where do you go? I guess is where do we start?
What I did is I just Googled how to archive your artwork, and all
Okay.
kinds of stuff comes up, you know, and that gave me some great ideas. There's actually places that you can pay a service to do it for you, and it's, you know, like $10 a month or something like that, and they, you know, I guess you just add all your stuff into their form, but I'm a little more frugal, and I'll just do it myself.
Yeah,
And there
because
are resources here in the city too. Chicago Public Library has a listing of artists, Chicago artists, a filing of that. And there's a lot of different approaches. And Carmen, you actually, when you were sharing earlier, talking about your prep for, you know, for your exhibits, and documenting, you know, how things were displayed last year in comparison, and all that. So you're probably way more ahead of the game than you even imagined too. So
oh, okay. I have a ton of photos, and I have to pay for that extra storage on top of it. So yeah, I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's just
I have
overwhelming.
only
It's
recently,
overwhelming to be an
I'm sorry.
artist.
Uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
instant.
I've only started thinking about archives. Um, and I started thinking about archives really after COVID. Not that I didn't get sick, but I did see a lot of people who are artists who unfortunately didn't fare out well as a result of the pandemic, and wondering what happened to their work, and basically just stayed in their it was in their basement. I didn't think about archiving, but they had a treasure trove of work in their basements, and I started thinking a little bit about it, but more recently have really started thinking about what will I leave for future generations? How will they view my work? How do I want my work presented? Uh, and I'll be honest, I wasn't sure where to go to um, to begin to ask someone, so which ones do I choose? Which ones really represent me, or the ones I would want to represent the work that body of work that I've done. So I've just started that particular journey, and I wrote down a few notes about where to go. But it's extremely important to archive your work such that future generations will know at this particular place, at this particular time, there was a group of artists who were doing fantastic work. And what did that look like? So it's like, because I'm a historian um, by profession, archives, I couldn't even do any work without archives. So I understand, but I hadn't translated that into my art world. And now I feel a real necessity to make sure that I leave something for future generations. And I'm going to definitely look at some of the material which has been discussed during this particular webinar and start the process.
And Karen, you're a poet as well. How have you been, what you just shared transfers over to your writings as well? Or do you have a different way of, have you been archiving those in a different fashion?
Um, I've written poetry for as long as I can remember. Um, and I've always loved it. Whenever I'm out shooting, everything is poetic to me. So whether it's the dawn, it's dust, when it's the snow, so I can go back with, write something down in terms of my own feelings. Um, Poetry for me is this very interesting language for me that translates into my photography, and I can blend the two together, and it's a whole new art form. And so often with my, if I'm doing an exhibit, I say at a public library, and I like public libraries because people go to libraries and they like to see the art. They walk around and look at it. Sometimes they'll look at the poem first, and then they'll look at the photo, and then go back from the photo back to the poem. And so that interconnectedness between the poetry and the photo, I'll just walk by anonymous and say, well, what do you think about that? They don't realize I'm the artist. I'll say, what do you think about that? They say, I love that poem. And it really fits with the photo that I'm looking at. So I realize, hey, I'm doing something right here because they like it. But I love the genre in terms of literature, and I love art. And so combining the two, and for me, art covers literature as well. Combining the two for me is very natural, and it gives a synergy and energy that I think helps not only the photo but enhances the poem.
Thank you for that. And as
Mhm.
we had mentioned, Chicago Area Archivist is another great resource here in the city too, but we'll look to promote other opportunities as well as it relates to the topic of archiving your own artwork as well. So let's dive into, what's next for all of you in terms of your next art fair, and what can we help promote where you'll be, and many of us are still in the Chicago weather restraints of that, but what's on your horizons as well? Ken, is there one in Arizona that you're eyeing, or?
No, I usually do Arizona, but I recently got asked to show at Water Street Studios in Batavia. So I'm going to have an exhibition there in April. and I actually backed out of a fair in Tempe because I didn't want to reduce my inventory that much, for the show. I will be doing a show in February, late February. It's called West Loop Expo, and that's at Plumbers Hall. It's on Randolph Street. It's the inaugural show. So there's going to be 40 artists at that one. That's February 22nd. Yeah,
Exciting. And that's the inaugural show for
for the West Loop Expo. It's the first time they're doing the show. First time this promoter is doing the show in Chicago. They're going to have another one in May. But in May, I start doing more of my Chicago area outdoor shows. In Elmhurst, there's the Art in Wilder Park. I'll do that, and then hopefully, I haven't gotten the results if I've gotten in or not at like Old Town, and hopefully I'll be doing that and 57th Street, and then on to Madison, and the whole summer thing. So
Whoa,
yeah,
a lot of shows.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm doing less than last year. Last year I did about 20 shows, and
Oh, wow.
that was just too much.
Wow.
Oh,
that was
no.
exhausting.
It was
A
No.
exhausting.
lot.
And the problem is that I don't do giclées and things like that. Giclées are reproductions, high quality reproductions, and I don't do that. So if I have a real good show one weekend, then next weekend I really don't have all my best stuff,
Right.
in my opinion. So it kind of hurts the next show. So I'm doing about half of what I did last year.
Well, for me, I'm going to be doing the other art fair in Chicago. That's in March, the last week of March. And then Southport Art Fest and Lakeview East Festival of the Arts, and hopefully Markets for Makers. I'm really trying to make low numbers. I always do the Women's Club in Evanston. That's usually in November. And not too many December shows, but basically summer shows. Um, just because. I mean, I want to show quality work. I don't want to be a mass production person. And I give myself the time to do the work and to pick the shows that I think have been good for me right now. I'm still looking for other shows, but I can't do too many. It's just too exhausting, too exhausting. And I have to depend on my friends, my community. Physically, it's a lot of work, and mentally, it's a lot of work, stress, all of the above, because you want to represent yourself the best you can, including the booth, the work, so that you're out there representing who you really are, and not because you're being forced to do all this mass production stuff. I'm over that. No, that was my early years where I thought I would do pieces that I thought would sell. No, not anymore. Now I'm showing me, my work, what I love, what I create, and I'm very happy doing this now.
How about that makes a difference too. It makes all the hard work that much quote unquote easier when you're driven by your own end game for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Cranston?
I don't have any lined up as yet. I was pulling back, much like Carmen, and I agree with her 100%. It's the quality of your work. Um, Doing smaller ones means a smaller number allows me to really kind of pull back and look at what I want to show. So I'm not sure if that would be gallery. I traveled uh, throughout Appalachia last summer and other parts, and looked at poverty in America. So I have a whole series of shots on that particular genre. Um, I did some exploration of abandoned buildings, and, and so I went back to this one abandoned site over a 4-year period, shooting fall, winter, summer, which is the Damon Silos. And so I wanted to show the type of work which I've done, which has been over a series of years, and a show in art, because nobody's going to want to buy that, but they want, and that's probably more gallery. Um, but I'm looking around for a few shows which I can show some of the other different types of things that I've done, but also probably looking for a few galleries where I can do a show like Poverty in America, which is unfortunate, but very important, because we forget that there are people who are below the poverty line, and particularly when I was in Appalachia over the summer, and so it's almost further journalistic. So, and sometimes I get a bit, I'll fall into that mode. Um, it's important to see America for me. It's important to understand what is America. What, who are we? And so traveling through North Carolina into Appalachia, traveling to other communities, in Memphis and up a little further, you get a clear idea. There's this other America, and in fact, I went to a church. I went to a church that was by the Klan, and I went into this community, and I walked through the community, and everybody's howdy. And I said, "Hey, I want to go to church." And this guy says, "Well, come on in." And I came in and then realized that it actually was a Klan church. And I went, I mean, the members were all belonged to the Klan. And I walked in, and the guy kind of asked me, he said, "Well, no, what are you doing here?" I said, "I've come here to worship." And he said, "You're a brave soul." I said, "That's fine. Do you mind if I take some of your photos?" And then he said, "Sure. Uh, we're people too." And we got that conversation. I got out as soon as possible. I'm still alive to talk about it, which I'm very glad. And at some point, would like to show that from their perspective, the Carolinas, the Blue Ridge Mountains, what they see, how their homes are built surrounding the lakes and the mountains and the forest area. It was truly eye opening. It was really eye opening. Once again, lucky to survive, so I can talk about it. But I think it's the photos that I now want to really show, that shows the other part of America, that shows abandoned sites, that shows us.
Well, and the idea of, that crossover of communities and being able to have that opportunity here in Chicago for these art fairs to foster those conversations in our own city, I think is so important on the artistic front of making art accessible. I think it's something truly to celebrate, and to celebrate the work of all of you as artists that you're doing, and that kind approach and that open approach of sharing the background of your work, why you do it, with those that are coming, and breaking down those barriers certainly makes art fun and accessible. And I'm so appreciative of all of you taking the time today to join this discussion. So I'll be bold to say I think the future of Chicago art fairs looks really good after listening to all of you. I'm quite pleased if we throw in some good weather on those outdoor art fairs, even more the better too. But no, thank you. And I encourage all our listeners to check out your websites, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.